I hereby call the Special School Committee meeting to order, it being time Tuesday, May 9th, 2023, when the George M. Romm Little Theater, Brockton High School, which is 470 Forest Ave, Brockton, Mass. 02301. As we begin, as every regular school committee meeting, I'm going to ask that we please stand and salute our American flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members of the school committee, this is a special school committee meeting. Our rules and regulations on a typical special school committee, not a regular, does not have hearing and visitors. But in light of the fact that there is a lot of folks here that want to speak tonight, as chair, I am going to make a determination. I've already confirmed with our attorney, Attorney Mello, that we are going to allow hearing visitors. It will be the exact same, ladies and gentlemen, exact same form on a regular school committee meeting, limited up to 3 minutes. And respectfully, I will, if you go over 3 minutes, I'm just going to give you a little tap, okay? There'd be no objections on that, but I am going to take a 2-minute recess so that Mrs. Campbell can do the sign-in sheet, and then we'll go back into special school committee meeting, okay? We'll take a 2-minute recess. I hereby call the Special School Committee back into order. As I indicated, we will be doing a hearing of visitors tonight, limited to 3 minutes. But again, under the regular rules and regulations on a Special School Committee, there is no specific requirement to a hearing of visitors as there is in a regular. So this will not create any type of precedent conditioned for any future Special School Committee meetings. There are 4 people that signed in. The first one is Kelly Kamara. Ms. Kamara? Good evening.
Nervous?
Oh, don't be nervous.
Okay. Good evening, esteemed school committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the students at the Brockton Virtual Learning Academy. We understand that nothing has been set in stone in regard to the future of the elementary level at the Brockton Virtual Learning Academy, and a lot of the talk is just hearsay, but we still have questions and concerns. I'd like to begin by stating the number of elementary students currently enrolled in grades 1 to 5. We have approximately 40 students, and that number was going to continue to grow, we had hoped, with the advertisement of our program through the Parent Enrollment Center. The BVLA is not about convenience, but rather necessity. Not only have we experienced this firsthand, but this is what the parents and the research tells us. Through online learning, parents have developed new opportunities to learn about their children, and as a result, allowed them a better understanding of their child's learning style, needs, or curriculum. One of our parents said he had a front row seat to his son's learning for the first time. He also shared that watching his kids learn and engage with classmates has given him insight on how to better parent them. According to 2009 research, children with emotional, behavioral, and physical health needs experienced increased rates of bullying victimization. The U.S. Department of Education suggests majority of bullying takes place in person and in unsupervised areas, and the supervision by parents and teachers in remote learning plays a part in reducing bullying and microaggression. Less bullying at school results in less stress, which can improve students' self-esteem and mood, both of which impact their ability to learn. Many of our learners with social anxiety, shyness, and a need to feel safe participate more in virtual settings and chats. This is attributed to the idea that learning is social and collaborative. At the BVLA, we can and we have met our students' unique needs and fostered relationships based on commitment and trust. Additionally, students have benefited from learning at their own pace in the familiarity of their own homes. We spend less time negotiating and more time celebrating our students' successes, and there has been an abundance. We collectively believe in our students and the importance of providing different platforms to support their learning. The technical skills learned through the BVLA are skills that can be taken with our students through their whole life. If our students can learn these skills at a younger age, their knowledge will only increase. We'd like to conclude by emphasizing that we support our superintendent's profound vision for the district and strive for academic excellence. We are a data-driven entity, and that data is used to drive our instruction. It is our hope that we can continue to provide incredible opportunities that work best for our students, parents, and guardians. We firmly believe in accessibility and equality for all our kids. We, as stakeholders, are all in this together. Thank you again for allowing us to share our thoughts, enthusiasm, and concerns.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kamara. Thank you. Before I have the next hearing visit, I forgot to read the following into the record. This meeting will be held and will be accessible to the public via Brockton Community Access, Brockton Public Schools website, which is the following: I'm sorry, these are old eyes. www.bpsma.org, YouTube, and Comcast Channel 98, and also 1071 HD version. The public can access this meeting via the following link as well: www.youtube.com/TheBrocktonChannels, and that will be read into the record. We will also do a roll call vote just to establish a quorum. Mrs. Sullivan? Mr. Homer?
Here.
Mrs. Ehlers?
Here.
Mrs. Mendez?
Here.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Here.
Ms. Azak?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
Chair is here as well. We established a quorum. We're good to go. The next hearing of is Ms. Lisa Bond, please. Good evening. Thank you for being here.
Hello, thank you for having me, and thank you for letting me speak. I just wanted to tell you how important the Brockton Virtual Learning Academy is to me. I have 3 children currently enrolled. 2 of them are right here, my 9-year-old and my 7-year-old. I have a 15-year-old at home as well. But my 9-year-old has, really benefited from this program. A week before his 5th birthday, he almost died from a dog attack, and he has scars all over his face. When he did go to school, he was getting bullied a lot about his scars, and he was asking about his scars a lot. He didn't want to go to school. He wasn't learning good. He was doing terrible in school. It was a fight to get him out of the door every day. Since this program, he has done so much better. He's actually learning. He loves to go to school. I can't say loves, but he enjoys to go to school. It's so much better. He doesn't have to feel like he's getting judged on his scars, or that's what he is. He actually gets to be himself more. And as well, my 15-year-old son just got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in November. He was going to Brockton High, but he wanted to go to BVLA, and he's happy to be here now because he has trouble with his insulin. You know, he can be at 400 and feel lousy and tired, and it would really stink if he had to walk around the Brockton High School all day. So being at home, he's way more comfortable being able to give himself insulin, you know, taking a 2-minute break during class instead of having to walk to the nurse's office. And there's been days that he feels lousy, and it's better for him to be at home and be able to do his work. He's a straight A student. He's an honor roll student. He's a real good kid. Also, my little one right here, when she was going to school, she didn't want to be in virtual, but when she was going to school, she was getting very sick a lot. Like, she had pneumonia a few times. She was sick more than she wasn't. Since starting virtual in December, she's been sick 1 time for 2 days. So it's been a blessing to have this. The teachers are amazing. They've all worked with my kids. They've all helped my children, and I would be devastated if something happened to this program. I literally wouldn't know what to do. My heart breaks, especially for my 9-year-old, because of his PTSD. It would be terrible for him to have to go back into that setting. And I just thank you for letting me speak, and I just wanted to let you guys know how much this program means to me and how thankful I am for all his teachers right here, but all his teachers. Everybody is awesome and amazing to him, and I literally would be heartbroken if something was to happen to this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bond. Thank you for bringing your children here as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next individual is, I'm probably going to say the name wrong, and I apologize, Tasha Figueroa. Good evening. Can you tell me how to say your first name?
Touche.
Touche. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Touche Figueroa. I am BVLA's
PAC president. I'm here to speak on behalf of many of our families who could not make it here tonight. I just wanted to let you know the benefit that it has not only to the children but the parents in the program, and to take that away from us without giving us an opinion or a right, we feel kind of robbed. A lot of us already feel underrepresented in this community, and BBLA was one place where we could go to and feel comfortable with our children being in school and not, like they said, being bullied, or the different situations like the opioid crisis that's currently going on in Brockton. That's a huge issue. We feel that BBL, for one, it's only been open for 2 years, so how can you close something down without actually accurately getting stats from that? Something to accurately get stats, you need to be open like 5 years. We've had other programs in Brockton that have been open longer and with less success rate. So I am a long time, I've been born here, I've lived here my whole life, and now my children are being raised here. And I feel like as a community, if we actually want this to succeed, we could make this succeed. And it takes a village to raise a family, but it takes a community to build a school. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Figueroa. Appreciate that. Thank you. The last individual is Ms. Miranda Bradsher. Good evening, Ms. Bradsher.
Obviously, I'm also here to talk about the Brockton Virtual Learning Academy. So, before all of our children were sent home on March 13, 2020, I would have considered my son, Jackson Bradsher, an average student. Since Brockton officially opened the Brockton Virtual Learning Academy, Jackson has continued to improve and even excel in regards to his schoolwork. He is thriving, and I refuse to see his progress suffer due to the classroom distractions that can happen in actual in-person learning. I won't allow the teasing and the bullying that he experienced while he was in school to make him anxious and stressed out again. He is 9, and that's not how he should be each day. My son was an emotional wreck each day after school, after his teacher, in his own words, screamed most of the day at the other children. My son has experienced 2 significant losses over the last 2 years, one of which was my dad, who worked for the Brockton Fire Department. But the Brockton Virtual Learning Academy helped us to keep them safe longer. And while we still have other concerns within our family, this program is incredibly important for keeping both us and people with health conditions safe. The teachers and other staff at the Brockton Virtual Learning Academy have taken the time to form a bond with Jackson, even through the computer screen. My mom picked him up from MCAS the other day, and teachers hugged him. And I know some people's concerns are that they're not getting that interpersonal connections while they're at the Virtual Learning Academy, and I think it's the opposite. I think they're able to focus more on the bond and less on what's going on around them. They know each of their kids in this program. They know their needs, their strengths, and their areas in need of improvement. We have been Brockton Public School family for 4 generations. My son is in Brockton Public Schools. I was. My mother and father both were, and my grandparents were as well. I love these schools, and that is the main reason I actually moved back to the city before Jackson started school, was so that he could have the same learning experience that I had at Brockton High. While I was at Brockton High, you were actually the assistant in my building at that point. But unfortunately, if this program is eliminated, I feel like I might have to remove him from the public school system, which would break my heart. But I just want to thank everyone for allowing me to speak tonight, and I just hope that we walk away from this understanding how important this school is, not just to myself and my family, but to a lot of the other children in this school as well. And in case we don't get the chance to say so, we want to thank everyone at the BVLA for helping Jackson grow and shine. Georgia Campbell, Mr. Mandeville, Mrs. Gallant, Mrs. Lynch, Mrs. Walker, just to name a few. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bradsher. Thank you. Thank you to the 4 individuals who spoke tonight. Truly appreciate your time and your words. We will now go on to the agenda. Number 1, we already did call the order. Number 2 is the discussion and potential vote. This is relative, and the individual that's going to present is on Zoom tonight, but it's, we also have Sergeant Mike Livingston is here if there's any questions, but it's Inforce 911, real-time threat alert and notification software, Agenda 2, so.
Mr. Brandon, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. Do you mind just stating your name and your position for the record, please?
Sure, very well. My name is Brandon Flanagan. I'm the president and CEO of Inforce Technology.
Thank you very much. And do you have a presentation for the school committee this evening?
I do. What I'd like to do, although I'm not entirely aware how much time you've allocated for this, I'd like to run through a quick demonstration of the Inforce 911 application.
Yes, you have enough time to do that. Thank you.
Great. So just give me a moment here. I'm going to share my screen. And I believe you should be able to see my screen at this time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Wonderful, thank you. So good evening, folks. Again, my name is Brandon Flanagan. I've met with many of you already in the past, and I'm seeing many of you again for another opportunity this evening. And for some of you, you've seen the Inforce 911 demonstration already in a couple instances. Most recently, we undertook a test and evaluation concept in which we deployed the application through the city and demonstrated the efficacy of the application utilizing city infrastructure and networking. What I'd like to do is, of course, take you through a very brief overview of the application today and allow for any questions or concerns that may arise immediately following. So with that in mind, by way of background, Inforce 911 is a real-time threat alert notification app. Think of this as, if you will, very simply as a mobile panic button in which we provide teachers, faculty, and staff the ability to access this application and to send an alert directly to Brockton PD in as little as 4 seconds. If at any point in time a teacher or staff member from any one of the schools in the community recognizes there to be a potential life-threatening situation that may be unfolding, like an intruder, somebody presenting a weapon, or worst case scenario, an active shooting situation, staff members will have the ability to launch the Inforce 911 app from any device within the classroom. Those devices include laptops, computers, desktops, smartphones, and even tablets. That also means that those individuals can send an alert utilizing any mode of connectivity. Of course, that includes Wi-Fi, hardwired Ethernet, and cellular service as well. The primary objective of the application is to reduce police response time, period, very, very simply put. The reason why that is because we know, statistically speaking, the sooner law enforcement arrives on scene during any one of these situations, the sooner the situation ends. And if we can end that situation faster than we'd be able to do otherwise today through traditional means, then we can in turn save lives in the back end. In addition, the application is designed to bridge the communications gap which exists between a building under threat, like a school, from the point of incident, with local law enforcement. So uniquely, how we accomplish that again is by providing teachers, faculty, and staff with access to the app, in which case they can send the alert to law enforcement. And again, that alert will be received by Brockton PD in 3 points of contact. Number 1, right directly to the patrol car itself via the in-car computer. Secondly, to the local dispatch communication center. And then thirdly, to the cell phones or smartphones of any officer, rank and file from command staff down to patrol officer. What you're looking at in front of you on my screen is what we refer to as the patrol interface. So segueing right into it, this is what law enforcement, in this case Brockton PD, will be utilizing. This enables them to receive the alert from any one of the schools in the community directly to, again, their in-car computer, to the dispatch center, and their cell phones all simultaneously. The schools with which the PD is partnered will be presented geographically and accurately on the map here, as you can see in front of you. Otherwise, the control panel in the blank white space over here is what will enable law enforcement officers to toggle between alerts. Very importantly, the application is CGIS 5 compliant, and that's how we run successfully and natively in the environments of law enforcement. It's also FIPS 140-2 certified. That speaks directly to the encryption standard by which we encrypt the data associated with Inforce 911. It meets the FBI standard, and quite frankly, it's the higher standard that we have available today in terms of encryption. In addition to that, all of the data is stored in Microsoft Government Azure, highly secure and incredibly redundant environment addressed for you on your behalf. Otherwise, the initiating application, hopefully you can see that on the lower right-hand corner of my computer screen. I'm not sure if it's cut off or not, but it is a small application, looks like a police shield, in which teachers, faculty, and staff would have access to. The application runs dormant, if you will, in the background of that device until we activate it. So in other words, it's always running. To activate the alert, all I need to do upon recognition of a threat is to click on the app. When I do that, you'll see I have a couple options here. Every staff member has up to 10 pre-programmed locations that are specific to them. So that means that those locations are specific to that user. As an example, that may include a homeroom location, other classrooms in which they teach, and perhaps other locations throughout the building that are current. In this case here, the main office has a check mark next to it because in this scenario, that is my default setting. Otherwise, you can then determine what type of alert it is that you wish to send. And just talking through them categorically very briefly, the first is the all staff alert. That is an internal only notification in which law enforcement intervention is not required, but more or less a meaningful way for staff and administration to communicate effectively through a streamlined environment internally. Otherwise, the latter three that I'll mention here, active shooter, intruder, and medical emergency, would all be sent directly to local law enforcement and the first responders in the community. Check mark, of course, next to active shooter because that is my default setting for the purposes of this demonstration. Without having to do absolutely anything further, all I would need to do at this point in time as the second click of the mouse is click on send emergency alert. When I do that, you'll see that I'm presented with this 10-second countdown window. If I do absolutely nothing further, this will elapse to 0, sending an alert to law enforcement automatically. Otherwise, I can cancel the alert or send alert to bypass that countdown and send it out faster. The audible visual notification of the alert that has just been received here, the forefront of my device, is what Brockton PD would be receiving. Again, in their patrol cars, the dispatch center, and their cell phones simultaneously. Instantaneously, it tells them that the Fenway High School, in this case, has initiated an alert. They're experiencing an active shooting situation. Its physical address is 71 Newbury Street in Peabody, Massachusetts. And more specifically, we recognize automatically that teacher Brandon Flanagan, located in the main office, is who and where that alert was sent from. So, what we've accomplished at this point in time, folks, is a notification to our local police department in quite literally seconds compared to what we know can take anywhere from 2 to 4 minutes on average from the time we pick up our cell phones, dial 911 to go through the routing process and eventually have that call for service received or responded to by our local law enforcement officials. That's just the national average. This, of course, is accomplishing that in merely seconds with actionable, detailed, and specific information to the nature of the threat and more specifically, the location of the threat. So what we've accomplished thus far is quite literally reducing response time by putting this into their hands that much quicker. In addition to the information that we've already captured here, I'm going to talk about these very quickly. We provide law enforcement with 2 repositories of information. The first here, which I'm circling with my mouse, is the emergency details. This could be information specific to the building. It could, as an example, include the name of the administrator, his or her emergency contact information, and any other nuance to that building. As an example, there's a single point of entry to the high school, but there's a Knox box or a super box location on the alpha side of the building, which would provide officers access to the building. Okay? Any nuanced or specific information pertaining to that building would be compiled here. In addition, we also will incorporate your floor plans, the blueprints, aerial photographic views of the campus, emergency operations plans, staging areas, locations, and any other pre-incident planning information would be contained and integrated here. The benefit, of course, is that we're taking very critical information, again, putting into the hands of our law enforcement officials, but doing so in a streamlined and integrated manner. Okay. In addition, law enforcement, having received the alert, would simply click on the screen tab here, and by doing so, in this case, Sergeant Flanagan is populated into the chat room, and we'll talk about why that's important here momentarily. Switching gears, if you would, following me, I just called up the second chat window here. The window that I just called up is going to be presented onto the screen or the device of the individual who sent the alert. So in this case, teacher Brandon Flanagan initiated the alert from my classroom or from the main office. This is the window that I'm then going to receive. First and foremost, this provides confirmation that it's been established by law enforcement and received by law enforcement. Okay? Further evidence or proof of that exists here because we're enabling staff members to see which officers are responding and which dispatchers are responding. And why we did that, of course, very simply is for peace of mind. We want that staff member to know that help is coming. It's almost as if the call is being answered, so to speak. Okay? And then from this point onward, we're going to bridge that communication gap or that barrier that we know inherently and categorically exists across the country from a school perspective, which is the inability to effectively communicate from the point of incident or at the point of contact with law enforcement. And why that is, folks, is because it's purely a numbers game. If the community only has 2, 3, or even 4 dispatchers on during the day, we know in a situation like this, everybody will be calling 911 inevitably. Absolutely everybody. Staff, students, parents, neighbors, community members, and the press. So the concern in these situations, as we've seen unfortunately time and again, at what point in time does a staff member with critical information ever speak to a dispatcher? The unfortunate reality is that it may not ever happen. So we're providing a very closed, encrypted network that's going to enable this teacher, in this case, teacher Brandon Flanagan, the ability to communicate directly with Brockton PD. So I could type a message that reads something as simple and as short as, shooter wearing a red shirt. Back to the top window up here on the left, law enforcement instantly, in real time, receives that description and from who and where that description was sent. And in response, we could say something like, ETA, 30 seconds. And back on the school side of things, I can see that I've established a real-time, two-way communication from my school, from my classroom, with Brockton PD. Now, what's happening simultaneously here is probably of paramount importance, in my opinion. Simultaneously, as this alert has been initiated and received by law enforcement, it's automatically notifying everybody else in the building to not only the nature of the threat, but the location of the threat as well. So we're automating the notification process by informing the remaining population of that school what the threat is and where the threat is. And of course, based on that information, we want to help staff take action decisively, and of course, depending on what that situation dictates. By way of example, if I'm 2 or 3 classrooms away from the main office, having received this notification, my best option is to probably barricade the doorway. If conversely, I'm at the opposite end of the building and I receive this information, my best option may be to evacuate with my 20 students. But the point that I'd like to illustrate here is that it's a near impossibility to ask staff what to do and ask them to take action if they don't know what's happening and if they don't know where it's happening. So we want to eliminate that guesswork, put everybody on the same sheet of music, if you will, by informing them of what's going on and where it's happening. And so based on information, we can hopefully help them take action accordingly and appropriately. Notwithstanding, because you have more than one individual from the school in this chat room, from a condensed perspective, that also means we can rely on information from more than just one individual. And that's hugely important for law enforcement because not only can we identify who that person is, or maybe we can call it additional identifiers, but we may also be able to track that individual's movement by letting law enforcement know that the individual who was last seen outside the main office is running towards the gymnasium. And of course, what that does is allow law enforcement to recognize where the threat is now compared to where it was maybe a few seconds ago. All the while alerting my colleagues who may be in the assailant's path. Okay. So of course, the two-way chat communication piece is incredibly important during the threat for all the reasons that we've just discussed and as I've demonstrated here for you. Where this also has gained tremendous traction is after the event is over with. And I can tell you, having done this for a very long time, that it's an administrative nightmare trying to identify where everybody is and where everybody went to. More importantly, how do we identify those who may be injured or need medical attention, right? From a law enforcement perspective, if they're clearing a building methodically, going room by room by room, it takes a very long time because it's tedious work. How can we shorten that time frame? How can we condense that down and help school administration wrap their arms back around the situation to not only de-escalate it, but to recognize where everybody is and where everybody went to? So the power here is having this chat, in which case law enforcement could type a message back into the school. And in this case, it may say all clear, but we're asking for rooms 1 through 10, check in with us. And you can see that I'm pushing this message back into the school so that school staff are receiving an all clear from Brockton PD. In which case, we will see classrooms, number 1 in this case, respond back and say, we've got 20 kids, we're accounted for. Classroom 2 may say, we've got our 22 kids, we're accounted for. Classroom 3 may say, well, I've got 2 kids who are injured and we need medical attention. It would sure be nice to know where those folks are who need medical aid so we can get to them sooner rather than later. And what happens if we have a teacher with 25 kids who evacuates from the school building, but they're hiding behind, I don't know, maybe it's the 7-Eleven. They can transition effortlessly from the computer in the classroom to their smartphone on their person, onto that app, and continue to remain in constant communication with not only law enforcement, but the school district itself. So obviously this is a tool which allows us to de-escalate, identify, account for, and reunify our staff and students, inevitably with parents and loved ones who are waiting for their return in the parking lot. Once the situation is over with, selectively in law enforcement, from law enforcement's perspective, they can end the alert by confirming yes, and you'll notice here that the alert has been closed and everybody's alerted to the fact that the alert has been closed. At this point in time, all of the data, including this chat transcript, is saved and stored for the district on its behalf. If at any point in time the district needs to utilize this dialogue or this information, select few registered individuals can make that request to the company. We provide that to them upon request. Otherwise, we take exceptionally our role in this as custodians of this type of information very, very, very seriously. We don't provide it to just anybody. We protect this with complete and the utmost integrity. Finally, of course, you can see I can click out of these. The alert's been closed. Data is stored and hosted. Lastly, what I'd like to talk about is the reverse notification. So if there's a situation in which law enforcement is made aware of a threat that the school district or a particular number of schools are otherwise unaware of, in which case this situation may affect them, law enforcement can go to the map here and click on this Send Reverse Alert tab. When they do that, they can determine which schools they wish to notify individually or categorically here, or they could just go on the map and geo-target a set number of schools in a particular region or in a particular district of the city. And by doing so, we could then type in a subject line, which in this case may read lock-in, because we have a known threat in the area. Once I click send, this alert will be broadcast from the police department to select individuals only at each one of these schools. So in other words, the alert's not going to be broadcast to every staff member, but rather select individuals only who are set up to receive that reverse alert. As a general rule of thumb, I always say it should be a group of folks big enough to see it and take action, but not too small to miss it. Who those folks are, usually front office staff, administrators, or other administration at that particular school, right? Folks who can take action decisively. Otherwise, when I click send, you'll hear the reverse alert come through and come right to the foreground as you saw the last alert do.
New Inforce 911 reverse alert.
And as a principal to that school, as an example, I could click on that green tab. This time I'm populated into the chat room. I could type a message in response that says something as simple as okay. And when I do that, law enforcement on their window recognizes that number one, I've received it, and number two, I've responded to it. Okay. Just 2 or 3 examples, folks, of when this has been used with our customers in live scenarios across the country. We've seen domestic custodial disputes spill out from the courtroom that wind up in the classroom. We can avoid those circumstances altogether with effective communication with a juvenile officer coming from court, as an example. We've seen police pursuits in progress, in which case it looks like the pursuit may be heading towards one of the schools. The kids are outside of recess. Maybe we should bring them in and lock them in to be better safe than sorry. I've seen a severe weather alert with a tornado in effect, and I've also seen a black bear outside of the playground of an elementary school. All examples kind of from most severe to less, in which case this has been utilized to create and establish effective communication. Okay, just a couple examples there. And as before, we can end the reverse alert, confirm yes, data is stored, hosted for you on your behalf. And that is your kind of 30,000 foot overview of the Inforce 911 app. Happy to take any questions if it's appropriate to do so, or to address anybody in particular.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for that detailed synopsis. Are there any members of the school committee that have any questions at this time? For either I'll start with Ms. Azak, followed by Mr. Sullivan. Ms. Azak.
Thank you, Brandon, for the presentation. Quick question. I apologize if I missed it, but I know that there's internal and external messaging. Did you cover the internal messaging with the schools?
So I touched on it briefly. I did not necessarily demonstrate that in and of itself. But yes, to your point, there is internal communication, so that if there is a message that the administration needs to push out to their staff, for whatever reason that may be, there's an internal only notification function that would allow you to do that.
Same for the staff to reach administration, vice versa. So this was very important, because right now a lot of them have the two-way radios. Rather than calling down to the office, they would have this option to go internally and send a message down to the office. So I just wanted the other members to just know that as well.
Thank you, Ms. Azak.
Yes.
Mr.
Yep,
Sullivan,
and that
please.
provides obviously a more routine use of the platform as opposed to those worst case scenarios. But again, because it does not require or does not warrant law enforcement intervention, it is a true internal school notification that allows for, again, real-time communication. Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Azak. Mr. Sullivan, please.
Hello, Brandon, you still there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is Tim Sullivan speaking. The question is this app secure, or can anybody break into it? What I was thinking about is
That's a very good
false alarms.
question.
How secure is the app?
Sure. So the application requires dual authentication. So in order to have access to the application, you have to not only be a registered user with an approved device. So although you could say, as an example, anybody could download the application, but that does not mean that anybody could have access to the application as a member of your particular school district. Not only is there a unique school ID that is generated for each district individually, but then again, you have to be a registered user and an active with approved devices to be a participant in the platform as a member of the district. So otherwise, in other terms, the school also has complete administrative privileges and autonomy over the software and over the application. So they always have the ability to control who has it and on which devices and when.
So is it fair to say there will never be a false alarm?
So false alarms mean different things for different folks. In terms of the application being used accidentally, in some instances with approved staff members, certainly we've seen that in the past, although that is limited by the curriculum that we roll out as part of our training process. In terms of a false alert with somebody with nefarious kind of intent trying to send the alert, that has never happened. I don't predict that would ever happen. And to that point, we've never even had a student activation of the application. And I'm gonna knock on wood as I say that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Any other school committee members have any questions? Any questions for either Aldo Petronio or any questions for Sergeant Mike Livingston at this time? Mr. Homer, please.
Thank you. Brandon, you talked just very briefly a moment ago about testing and training. And when you mentioned for account management how the school would have the authority to set up and manage accounts and things, I was just thinking in terms of how frequently do you do training and testing with school districts that are using the equipment right now? And I'm just thinking in terms of, new staff hires, new training for new staff members that begins usually in the beginning of the year before the school year begins, training during the year. I mean, how long does it take for staff to be trained to use the software?
Great couple of questions. Thank you for asking. So from a training perspective, we really like leveraging a train-the-trainer model because we are allowed to spend a little bit more time together and to really drill, the finer points of the software, discuss those finer points and how it should be used throughout the district while maintaining expectations and things of that nature. Quite frankly, 60 to 90 minutes is all that is required. We also record the sessions. We edit them for you. We will provide you with supplemental documentation, training materials, user guides, and other supplements to, of course, ensure that you have the full capability to make this a successful endeavor. In terms of testing, if the school district is running lockdown drills or other type of related events throughout the year as part of their processes, that's something that we strongly recommend integrating or incorporating Inforce 911 into. This is a great opportunity to literally kickstart a lockdown event. By initiating the alert, you have the ability to put the system into test mode and you can coordinate tests with the police department. And that's something that we strongly encourage and certainly something that we would be more than happy and willing to participate in and to support the district in that endeavor moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you. And just one more question to follow up on that. Just thinking in terms of like logistics of just the number of faculty and number of staff, even just within the high school itself too, can the system support constant barrage of messaging from up to 200 different people who are trying to jump on and connect to a limited number of law enforcement members that might be receiving that?
Yes. So the short answer is yes. And another good question. As part of our process that we undertake, anytime we release a new upgrade, for that matter, to the software, we continuously conduct penetration and stress testing. As part of the stress testing environment, we really run this thing to thousands of users, and it has the fullest capability of supporting any school district in the country for that matter.
Thank you, Mr. Homer. Any other members have any questions for Mr. Flanagan? Mr. Flanagan, I want to thank you very much for your time this evening. You really give a detailed presentation. We appreciate that.
Thank you for allowing me to be here. I appreciate the opportunity and accommodating me via Zoom. It's nice to see you all. If there's any other questions that arise, please feel free to get a hold of me. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Have a good evening.
Take care.
Are there any questions for either Mr. Petronio in the capacity as CFO or Sergeant Livingston relative to this matter? None? Oh, Vice Chair?
Do we have an updated contract?
Mr. Petronio, could you give an update relative to that matter?
Good evening. So I've been corresponding with Mr. Flanagan. We've changed the contract to what is within our scope, a 3-year contract, that at the end of the term of the contract, we can negotiate a new one. So anything greater than that would have had to go to City Council for approval and would have basically slowed down the process. I've explained to him our budget process, and that this is currently in the budget for July 1st, the FY24 budget. So we'll be discussing it, and if it's approved in that budget, then we will sign a contract with him to begin at July 1st for the coming school year.
Ms. Zazak, please.
So, Mr. Petronio, just a reminder, when we went over some of the items last week for the budget, the superintendent, you had mentioned taking the text, which was about $10,000 a year, if we were to remove that. So if we were to approve this would be, we're saving $10,000 by removing the other item that we had on our budget.
Correct.
So
took
even
out
though it's like
text.
30-some odd thousand, it'd be really 20-something thousand, because we'd be saving on an item that we were removing, just so the committee knows that.
Correct. We're basically upgrading from a text-to-tip to a real online active program. So you're absolutely correct. We took that out.
So, Mr. Homer, please.
Mr. Petroni, are there any other additional purchases that the district would need to incur in terms of like server space or anything like that for computer software, or anything like that?
From what I understand, no. It's basically an app like any other app on your phone. They incur all the costs on their end. Like you said, it all goes through their system, their security walls, their archiving of files. So everything's on their end.
Any other questions for the CFO at this time? Thank you. Thank you, Aldo. We'll go on to the next agenda item at this time. We will be going into executive session, and I need to read the following into the record, please. School committee will go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions and preparations for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, and Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, Brockton Education Association, BEA. We will be coming back into session. I need to entertain a motion to get a proper second to go into executive session. Is there a motion?
Motion to go into executive session?
Motion was made by Ms. Azak. Is there a second?
Second.
Second was made by Mr. Rodriguez. I need to now legally call a roll. Mrs. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Homer?
Yes.
Vice Chair Ayers?
Yes.
Mrs. Rivas-Mendez?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Azak?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
The chair says yes, but again, we will be coming back into to session again. Thank you. I hereby call the Special School Committee back into order. We are now on agenda number 4. Before we go to 4, I just have to do a roll call vote to get us back in. Mrs. Sullivan? Mr. Homer?
Here.
Vice Chair Ayers?
Here.
Mrs. Rivas-Mendez?
Here.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Here.
Ms. Azak?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
Chair is here as well. We're back in officially. Agenda 4 is on the agenda, FY 2024 budget update. Mr. Petronio, please.
Good evening. As you can see, I handed out an update of the budget book we've been working out of. We'll do this as we go along the whole process. The date on the front says May 9th, which is tonight's date. But I've also stamped the covers of all these that say work in progress. We're getting a lot of calls at Central for people asking for this. We're giving them to whoever asks, but they have to understand that this book is a work in progress, that none of this is set in stone yet. It's not until you vote on the final budget and all cuts are made. But that being said, as we meet and as we make changes, I'll keep updating it. So if you turn in the first page of the book, I updated the proposed budgets. You can see FY21 through FY24. In the FY24, I've added in some of the cuts we've made. The cuts that have been done so far in the book, the executive team has met, and we've gone through most of the items. Everything except for positions has been adjusted in the book as far as any cuts. The actual cuts themselves to positions you'll vote on later tonight. So to make it easy, what I did was everything in the book that we've discussed and we've either cut completely or reduced, you'll see them in a sort of a red or a pinkish tint. Couldn't get a light red on my computer. And I put some notes as to what we changed, what we reduced. A couple might have been increased. You'll see that summertime help in the IT department, we increased it to $75,000 from $10,000 originally last year. That's because the $2 million budget later on in the book for new laptops for next year, we needed to take some reduction, and although they need them, we decided that we'll reduce that number, hoping that we'll get some grants later on in the year to purchase some more laptops. But at least for now, this will allow Dan Vidge and his department to have some extra techs over the summertime, go through and start repairing a lot of the laptops that we have. They get damaged, the buttons get popped out from students, the screens get cracked. So they'll go through and they'll work this summer on repairing more laptops. That's why we increased that amount. And going forward, as we roll out new software, the same thing. Those students, when I say students, they're usually college kids. They go around to all the different schools and they go to every laptop, make sure it's ready for September. So they spend the summer getting all 15,000 laptops ready for the next school year. Other than that, most of the other cuts you'll see in the budget are to various ordinary maintenance items. Made a cut to custodial overtime. We looked at what we spent last year in custodial overtime. That number was large because we had a lot of ESSER projects that we had been doing and ESSER funding that paid for them. And we had them around the district and meeting with Ken Thompson and Jamie from the facilities department. We went through what was contractually obligated for the custodians and the maintenance and outside grounds. We come up with a schedule for next year. And although it looks like we cut quite a bit out of it, again, most of it was extra money that came in for extra projects last year, but we'll continue this year doing pretty much what we did last year for all our building maintenance. Other than that, we cut classroom materials by 10%, and the reason we did that is because we're going to go through every school there is and pull out every bit of paper, pencils, supplies they have, and make sure that it all gets used up. We'll use all that, and we should be able to get through the year fine with the budget we have for all of the departments, and that'll get us better lined up for next year, knowing that we're starting off clean. And just for a matter of time, we hadn't done too much on the non-net portion of the budget, the transportation, the busing. We'll save that, I think, because of the late hour this evening. We'll save that for the next meeting. That's only a 2-page budget. We can pretty much handle that in one evening. But everything else in the book, the proposed cuts are all there. You can review them. You can call me, email me if you have any questions. If there's other items you want to see, please get in touch with me, and I'll get you more information on them.
Thank you, Mr. Petrono. Any questions for the CFO relative to his presentation?
Thank you, Aldo.
Thank you very much, Aldo.
So just so we can go over now, tonight we have, we're able to reduce as we came to you over the last couple weeks, we were looking that we were going to have to eliminate 150 BEA, which are certified positions. We have brought that number down to 130 using some reallocation, restructuring that we continue to work with in bargaining with BEA leadership and our attorneys and their attorney to be able to, again, protect classrooms. And so we're looking at some eliminations and restructuring of administrative positions and other positions that helped bring the number back down to from 150 to 130. We also looked at cutting some overtime that we were able to get that number down. So basically, between last week and this week, we were able to cut it down to 130 positions. Unfortunately, because when you're cutting positions and you're also eliminating some administrative positions, and if you are redesigning positions, it calls for bumping. So if the person has professional status or seniority, then they have to be placed back where they hold a license, which means they would bump somebody that's less senior. So you always have to unfortunately over-riff. Even though we're down to 130 positions, Dr. Moran would need up to 200. We might not have to send that many, but she has to go through any people returning from leaves, any people that we have decided to riff that are current administrators would have a right to go back to the job they came from in the BEA. And so you have to, unfortunately, over-riff. But the final number will still stay at 130. But you have to send out more pink slips for the bumping factor, and also you have people coming back from medical leaves and other alternative career leaves and other leaves coming back that also would bump less senior people.
Superintendent, what date would the notification go out to the people impacted?
They're due by May 15th, so that's next Monday.
So you need a motion tonight with that 200 number, but based on the understanding there would be 130.
Yeah, there'll be 130 real positions lost, but we have to have the capacity to be able to go up to 200, which is not cutting 200 people. It's basically allowing for the bumping.
Any questions to Superintendent relative to that? If not, I do need a motion relative to what Mike had just indicated. Is there a motion on the floor right now?
Can I just add one more thing? So again, I said this last time, I mean, this is not a good day for us because we don't want to let anybody go. Like I said, I've added 383 positions over the last 4 years, and unfortunately, Roman has dropped about 1,350. So again, we're hoping that our enrollment will go back and we can stabilize the district, but with the enrollment and with the ads, and I'm not just saying this, is we are still being able to hold on to, we added 224 additional BEA positions over the last 4 years. We're still, even with the cuts, we'll be able to still hang on to 94 people that were not here in 2019, even though we're down 1,350 students. So, I mean, it's not anything to rave or brag about because we don't want to cut anybody, but, you know, we have to hope our enrollment starts to go back up and figure out how we can make that happen.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Any questions or comments at this time? And if not, we would need a motion.
Only because I know that nobody wants to be the person to make this motion, so I will make the motion to allow the superintendent to do the redesign and be able to process the 200 pink slips for a final of 130 BEA members that will have to be RIFed.
Still form of a motion. Is there a second on that motion, please? A motion was made by Vice Chair Ayers, was properly seconded by Mrs. Sullivan. All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed, raise your hand. Motion carries. Is there another vote needed tonight?
Not tonight.
No. Okay. And I do want to acknowledge again the BEA. We're lucky to have Kim Gibson as our BEA president, and I've said this before, one loss of job is too many. It impacts people's livelihoods and family life, and we understand that. And believe me, I know, because I grew up the son of a teacher, so we take this extremely serious, and we need to figure out how to get the enrollment back. Number 5 on the agenda tonight is other business. Is there any other business before us tonight? Ms. Azak, please.
Thank you. I know that the deadline to appoint the building committee for the MSBA project is coming up, or I know it's around this time. So I know we talked about
last week.
Yeah, so let me be clear on this, because I've gotten a lot of calls from city councilors and school committee members. I was asked to give an initial list. I gave the initial list. I gave 2 elected officials at this time with the understanding to the state that I'm going to add others. City Council President Suna Castro on behalf of the City Council, and Kathy Ayers as Vice President of this esteemed body. They asked us for a drop dead date to get it out. We got it out. The CFO, all the Toronto CFO, Troy Clarkson. So I just want to make this clear. This isn't disrespecting anybody, and I've made it clear to them that we can add, and they agreed we can add. So if anybody's interested, when we do add, just reach out to me, and I know you already have.
Yeah, I've reached out. It's nice to have some alumni on the committee. So, and I know there's a few of us. So we had talked about possibly putting 3. We've done the roof project at Huntington and only had the school committee member and the counselor for that, Ward 3. So this is a big project. So we definitely need more on that committee.
Right, but as I just said to you, Joyce, we're going to add to that, but
Sure.
they asked me to get it to them the same day. and we got it to him same day to check the box, so we wouldn't be disqualified for a $500 million project.
Sure.
So I will take that under advisement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other business before us tonight?
Just a reminder that this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is the musical.
Yes.
And so we hope people come out for the musical. Mr. Hogan was here last week, so it's Friday night. I believe it's 7 o'clock Fridays, 7 o'clock on Saturday, and 6 on Sunday. So there's tickets available, and so just to remind people of the musical going on, Mamma Mia, this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
There's a rumor that you're going to be singing the ABBA at the end, Superintendent.
Oh,
Mr. Hogan told us we can sing at the end. Is that rumor true?
you better not announce that because you won't have anybody.
Well, Mamma Mia?
You're not going to sell one ticket.
Any other business before us this evening? If not, sure, Mr. Homer, please.
Just a quick reminder, too, that I think the community schools is still advertising summer programs and summer camp registrations and things that are available now, too. So it's another good opportunity. Those enrollments are happening, and that's something that we want students to be able to take advantage of.
Absolutely. And if there's anybody watching that is looking for summer youth employment, both the city and schools have that. So join our website, and we're happy to accommodate if it meets that need. Anything else? If not, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion was made, probably seconded? Seconded, made by Mr. Sullivan, and Mr. Sullivan second. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Drive careful. Have a good night.